it's not about the end result, it's about the journey, and what is excellent today in Jazz 4 or what is excellent today in marching band isn't going to be what's excellent tomorrow or a week down the road or a month down the road. I'll use Jazz 1 as an example, because we play a lot of, legit, Basie charts, Stab Jones, Mel Lewis chart. We play them real well. They're high school kids. The first time they look at those, they read them pretty well, but there's a lot wrong, But I say to them, guys, that was nice. That was really good sight reading. Some of them will look at me like, what are you, nuts? That sounded terrible. I'm like, yeah, it did sound terrible, but it sounded good for day 1. Now let's make it better for day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll record the band, those first couple rehearsals. And sometimes I don't even tell them that I'm recording them. I'll just do it on my cell phone, the voice memo thing. And in a month or 2 down the road, I'll replay that and I'll say, you remember this? And they'll go, oh my gosh, yeah, that was terrible. And I'm like, not for that day it wasn't terrible, but look how far you've come. Now this is where you are now. Now, in a month from now, or, whatever the time is that I have, you're going to listen to this recording and you're going to sound even better then. So to me, it's become all about the journey. And I've told kids, whatever happens in the concert happens. I've heard you play this piece so well so many times. Don't put that pressure on yourself that, oh my gosh, if the concert isn't good, then we're not good. Or if a judge, gives us a 90 and not a 98, then we're not good. It doesn't matter. It's about the journey, and it's about making the music, and it's about, that whole process for me is what it's all about.
Welcome to Director's Circle, a podcast featuring insight from music educators and school leaders discussing their philosophies on the administrative leadership of a comprehensive music program. I'm Doug Conrad, and today's guest is Mr. Todd Stefan from Wexford, Pennsylvania. Let's begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Director's Circle. I'm Doug Conrad. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the podcast, make sure to stay updated on all future episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play Music. You can also head on over to Facebook and look us up under Director's Circle and like us to stay updated on all future events and episodes, as well as following us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you've ever been to the great city of Pittsburgh, you know that there are many things there that they take very near and dear to heart. For example, Pittsburgh Steelers football, one's preferred style of pierogi, as well as the many outstanding music departments and band programs of the region. Well, today's guest is a great educator from the area of Pittsburgh, and his name is Mr. Todd Stefan. Todd teaches in the North Allegheny School District, specifically North Allegheny Senior High School. There he oversees a band program consisting of several concert bands, jazz band, and also directs the acclaimed Tiger Marching Band. Under his leadership, Todd has taken ensembles to perform at PMEA All-State Conferences, NAfME All-Eastern Conferences, and has even led the Tiger Marching Band to march in the inaugural parade for Barack Obama's first presidential election. So, to tell you more about his life and many great things that he has done through his career, here's my interview with none other than Mr. Todd Stefan. Hello, Todd. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the fact that you asked me to be a part of this.
Yeah, man, glad to have you here. And right now we're kind of looking at, in Pennsylvania, a big winter storm coming up. Not thunderstorm, duh. So with Pittsburgh, yeah, how's the weather looking for this weekend? Are you guys going to be snowed in?
I don't think so. They're saying it's going to start as snow and then switch over to sleet and then end as rain. So yeah. Probably won't get much of anything.
Yeah, down here in South Central, it's supposed to be about 1 to 3 inches, so I'm heading down south to D.C., so we'll see where that goes. But anyway, so for anyone that has never met you before, could you talk a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and some about your background in your life and what you've done professionally?
Sure. I graduated from Seneca Valley High School, so I'm one of Mr. Matchett's kids. From there, I went to Youngstown State University. Obviously studied music education with emphasis in percussion. And then upon graduating from YSU, I was lucky enough to get a job at a small school district in Mercer County, Sharpsville High School, where I got there. There were about 35 kids in the band and no trumpet players. not even a bad one. So that was quite a challenge. But within 3 years, we had that thing built up to about 120 people for a small single A school at that time. That was pretty good. I thought, I want to get on to bigger, maybe bigger things. And I moved out to Harrisburg, and I was the band director at Cumberland Valley for 2 years. And really, honestly, it was a great place, but I just became really homesick. I mean, I missed my family, my friends. I'm a Pittsburgher, so I had to be back here in Pittsburgh. So I was lucky enough again to find a job at Thomas Jefferson High School, West Jefferson Hill School District. And I was actually really happy there. That was a great place. Then I was at a region band, I think. I met one of the staff members from North Allegheny, and they had said that, they're looking for a band director. Some things fell through, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'm really happy where I am. And they're like, oh, just apply, whatever. So I applied, and here I am today. I've been there for 17 years now.
That's a great story. So can you talk to us a little bit about your current program at North Allegheny and some of the numbers in your program, the different ensembles and things that your groups have done over the years?
Sure. I think we're kind of unique at NA, at least in this part of Pennsylvania, maybe in Pennsylvania as a whole, in that we have 6 concert bands, 9 through 12. Now, we do have 2 high schools as well. There's a 9 and 10 building, which is the intermediate high school, and then we have the 11 and 12 building, which is the senior high school. So each one of those buildings has 3 concert bands in it. I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful co-director that does the intermediate bands, and then I concentrate on the Nash bands, the 11 and 12 bands. At the intermediate high school, we have what's called an honors wind ensemble. And those are that's an audition group of the best 9th and 10th graders for that particular year. If you're in 9th grade and you don't make the honors wind ensemble, you'll be placed in the 9th grade concert band. If you're a 10th grader and don't make the honors wind ensemble, you're placed in the 10th grade concert band. That kind of alleviates some of the, band 1, 2, 3 kind of stigma that gets put on, because it gets put on the kids sometimes, and well, I'm in the bad band, so we try really hard to get rid of that stigma. Now, when they come up to the senior high where I teach, we feel that they're old enough and more mature that they can kind of handle that. So we have an honors level wind ensemble as well at the senior high, which would be the top 11th and 12th graders. Then we have a true second band, which is our symphonic band, and then we have a third band, which is our concert band. So those are the concert groups we have. Then we have 4 jazz ensembles, 9 through 12. I do band 1 and band 4, and my assistant does band 2 and 3. Those are all after school, though. We usually get about 2 days a week in for an hour and a half each session. So, for instance, today I had jazz 1 from 2:30 to 4. That's what I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And of course, we have a marching band, which hovers right around anywhere between 250 and 300 kids. It varies between those two. 250 is probably about our average, maybe 260. And that's, of course, only in the fall. So yeah, those are basically our programs. Oh, we also have an indoor percussion group too. That actually I don't do. We have a third assistant director who's a percussion guy. His name's Evan Brown. He does a great job. They do WGI and all that kind of stuff. I think they're going to Worlds this year, which is kind of cool for them. So in Dayton, Ohio. But yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot going on. So when you first started at North Allegheny, you said you had some previous jobs before that, so you had been teaching for a while. And whenever you first started at North Allegheny then, was it something where you knew for a while that you were going into the position, or was it something that kind of came up quickly, or how did that go?
Well, it was actually kind of strange because, like I had said before, I was at Sharpsville, and then I went to Cumberland Valley, and then I went to Thomas Jefferson. And I went to a region band I think it was at Butler, and I had heard that, NA was looking for a high school band director because some things had happened, with the guy they hired. I still don't know the 100% full story, but I was really happy at TJ. Like I was like, all right, I just got this job. I don't want to move again, that kind of a thing. But I was convinced to go ahead and take the interview by my assistant that's there now. And I took the interview, and it was kind of weird because I went in with my suit, and at the time I still had a binder, which was my portfolio. Nothing was online yet. And the two people that interviewed me, the human resources director and one of the principals, they were in jeans and a t-shirt. So I'm thinking this is either really good or really bad. So I had the interview. I thought it went really well. Then actually I took off for Montreal with my wife. It was our first wedding anniversary. And then I got a call, I don't know, a week or two later that said that, they wanted to hire me, and we discussed it, talked about it. And I said, all right, I guess I'm coming to North Allegheny.
Wow. So how much time did you have between that phone call and your first interaction with kids?
Let me see, probably about less than a month.
Wow, that's a real quick turnaround.
It is, yeah.
But and especially with the school that size, that's quite a remarkable turnaround. So let's say when you were in Montreal and you got that phone call, and then before you had your first time with kids, what did you do in that in-between time to really get things rolling? And what did you do throughout that first interaction? Most likely probably like a preseason band camp before school started to really get things going in your first year.
Well, I was really lucky in that, like I said, the assistant, my assistant, his name's Steve Baldanzi, by the way. He's a great trumpet player, great teacher, great friend. He was the assistant the year before to the guy that was there. So he kind of knew the kids already, kind of knew what was going on. We had a show written already. Actually, the music was already selected. Thankfully, it was like Birdland and Chameleon and that kind of stuff. So I was hip to that. That was cool. So he kind of took care of all of that stuff. And I kind of just walked in and we were off and running. It was tough at first because obviously anytime you have a turnover in directors, there's those that are loyal to the old director and those that want to see change. And so it was tough the first couple years, but it worked out well. It really did. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, and especially for me, I work in a smaller rural school in Pennsylvania, and you said your first job was kind of that experience, especially your first year, and
first three years. I was at Mercer County for 3 years at Sharpsville. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, and sometimes even with starting out somewhere in a larger school, because I used to work in a larger school as well, and even working in a smaller school, sometimes even the way a program or even a school in general can really hold on to traditions and ways, and with all good intent, sure. There's certainly a lot of ways to go into a program, and as far as like walking in to your first job at a smaller learning community, and then going into North Allegheny, which is one of the largest high schools in the state of Pennsylvania, were there any big differences that you noticed between and how you had to enter each of those type of learning environments?
Well, yeah, Sharpsville, it was that was my first gig, so I didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean? So, but thankfully there, I could, I had a lot more room there to experiment, I guess is better, because I had a great education at Youngstown State, but nothing really prepares you until you get on the job, But then coming to NA, like you said, they had their traditions and we really just decided that, look, we're gonna run this thing as it has been here, and then we're gonna slowly make changes. We're gonna slowly implement things. Like they used to go to bowl game parades every year. Yeah, you'd be gone for your entire winter break or whatever. So we slowly morphed that over into now we take spring trips and we do adjudications, that kind of thing. So the first couple of years, you always have people a little bit of pushback, whenever you try to change things, but. There were still some things that we kept, like the marching band does this dance called the Abunga. It's a tradition that Frank Farina, who was the band director there for so many years, where I student taught with Frank actually, and dear friend of mine, one of my mentors. I said, so we that we still do, because we keep it. And there's other little things too that we do at NA that are still from the past. But after 17 years, it slowly starts to become your program and whatnot. So
certainly, and with each program, there's lots of things that you'll do differently in a marching band versus a concert ensemble or anything. But was there anything that when you first entered your position in North Allegheny is a way to gauge the different types of traditions in each ensembles? How did you exactly approach that kind of thing, especially when you deal with so many ensembles in your position?
Right. Well, the thing that I was always taught, especially when you get into a new job, is if you have that band camp thing that goes on before school actually starts. So you get that off to a good start, and the other things will fall into place a little bit more easier, because you've been with the kids for 2 weeks or whatever, and then you get into the concert the concert thing, and the kids already know you, so it's not like the first day of school is your first day of school. You had your first day of school, first day of band camp. So that helps ease, help ease the transition for the kids a lot. Like I said, when I got there my first year, the show was already picked and the drill was already written. So I sort of had to live with it for that first year, but it was good. I mean, I had no issues with the music or the drill, or it was, I'm grateful that it was already done. Now with the wind ensemble, it was not an honors class when I got to NA. So we implemented that over the course of a few years, and really pushed the envelope with that ensemble to get it up to, playing, not just playing, grade level 3 and 4, but actually getting into the 5s and 6s, and taking that group to adjudications and whatnot. And then eventually we got even with the second band, the symphonic band, playing 4s and 5s and taking them to, on the trips with adjudications as well. So.
Yeah, certainly a lot. And especially then with the program with as many of the different groups you have, there's a lot of administrative tasks involved too. So for someone in your position, can you talk about the types of tasks that are involved with running your program? Maybe not even just at the senior high school, but if you have any other types of administrative tasks overseeing any part of the band program as a larger whole, and just kind of maybe some of the challenges and how you handle with running and keeping up with those administrative tasks.
Well, I am extremely fortunate to have just a terrific staff. Like I said, Steve Baldanzi, I couldn't ask for a better, partner in crime, so to speak. Cause he, him and I, we work together really, really well. And then to have Evan there as well, doing the percussion stuff, he takes care of all that stuff. We have great middle school teachers. And then, we have 3 middle schools. So 3 great middle school teachers, 7 elementaries. So the elementary teachers are great. So I really don't, it seems like it would be a lot, but when you have people in place that do their jobs and do them well, it really makes your job, a lot easier to do. Cause I trust the elementary band directors. I trust the middle school band directors. And they continually turn out good products, year in and year out. Now I don't know if this is what you mean, but we do like recruitment things. Like we have an 8th grade marching band night where all the 8th graders come up. We do an 8th grade jazz night where all 3, or not 8th grade jazz night, middle school jazz night, where all 3 middle school jazz bands play. And then band 1 will do like you play 3 or 4 tunes at the end of the concert, to say, this is where you guys can end up. So we do things like that. I go down and visit the I go down and visit the middle schools, elementary schools sometimes, but mostly the middle schools. Sometimes just to hang out with the bands, like they'll be having rehearsal and I'll just move around from section to section and talk to the kids just so they get to know me, and who I am. And I know that Steve will go down and do placement auditions. I think that's coming up here in a couple weeks. So he'll meet every kid individually as well. So that's always nice. Good time to have, with those 8th graders moving up into the high school.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear about, especially with the as far as like the great educators that are in your program and within your district, and as far as like with how you work together. Can you talk a little bit about how you and the other directors maybe try to align goals and the vision for your program? Is there anything curricular that you try to do from a beginning band student until they're all the way up with you in the senior high school, or do you have specific goals for each grade level or anything like that?
Yeah, well, actually, that's something that we've been working on now for a while. Because you have new teachers, and you have veteran teachers, and then teachers like me, or I guess I'm getting towards the end, but I still have over 10 years left. But so some people, they do what they do; they're kind of stuck in their ways. So we're trying to align things a little bit better, so we know that each student at every level is getting the right instruction. But that can be tough when you have 7 elementary schools and 3 middle schools, and this has worked for so-and-so for so long, and this has worked for so, but as I said before, we haven't really had an issue of kids getting into the 9th grade and like not having a clue, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't know that there's a legit like spiral, what do you call it, spiral curriculum or whatever, where it comes down. With something we talk about a lot in our service meetings and touch base on, but we each have our own curriculums for sure, but to align them, it can be kind of cumbersome in a district that large, when you're dealing with 7, 8, 9, 10 band directors, right? So
Yeah, that's cool to hear that. And especially then with the program, with as many teachers and with as many students and what you guys have going on, and especially you said within the amount of kids that you oversee in the marching band, one of those biggest things that can go to as far as with that recruitment and retention, kind of with those tactics you talked about, is just the building of relationships and maintaining those individual relationships. And I know, especially having prior experience in a larger school too, sometimes it can be a lot different versus where I am now, where literally every time I have my concert band class, I can stand outside the door and see each kid before I even make my way to the podium. Versus where you have quite a few students, over 200 and some, in your marching band. I'm sure it takes a lot of time and unique ways to really get individual and craft those relationships with each student. So could you talk a little bit about how you approach getting to know students and building those relationships, especially in a program which has a wide array of different ensembles, but then also whenever you meet as a whole, even say in your marching band setting, just how you kind of keep that connection between you and each of your kids?
Well, I will tell you one thing that I learned a long time ago, and it was from one of my probably my most important mentor, Steve Gage, which I know did one of these podcasts with you already. Dr. Gage, a wonderful human being, just a wonderful person, great teacher. He told me one thing: it's all about relationships, and making sure that you develop those relationships with your colleagues, with other faculty members, and with your kids, most importantly. And I make every effort, to learn every kid's name. And I do, like you said, I do stand outside the door of the band hall, and give kids fist pumps and high fives. And I ask them about, hey, how'd your game go? If they play hockey or basketball, or I have some football players, not in the marching band, but in the concert groups. I try to take an interest in their interests, as well, because they all don't live and die band, they have other interests that they want, and I think it's important for me to get to be interested in the students as people, not just musicians. So I really do make a concerted effort to learn names, and one of the things I do right at band camp is I'll have a roster of all the ninth graders in front of me when I'm up on the in the stands or up on the hill, and I will watch ninth grade. I will call them out individually and say, hey, so and so, that was a really good roll step, nice job, or hey, your horn angle's really good, and I'll make sure that I compliment each freshman by name, in front of the whole ensemble, because I think that makes them feel, oh, hey, he notices me, he knows who I am, because in a large program it can be very easy to hide, and disappear. You got 300 kids on the field. That's it's easy to do, but that's a big thing for me is learning kids' names, and I've even had kids over the course of my career. I'll walk up to someone if I'm down at the intermediate, and I'll say, hey, so and so, and they're like, how do you know my name? I'm like, I know, I know, So that's very important to me.
So to kind of talk about that even a little bit more specifically now, let's say if I am an incoming, once was an 8th grader, now I'm about to be a freshman, it's August, I'm starting my first band camp with you. What specifically would you do, or what kind of things would happen for you to even just get to know my name? Because I know some people, they might have that huge roster of students with their picture next to it, or is there some kind of activity involved with that? Because I especially imagine with your incoming freshman classes being rather large.
Yeah, well, no, I don't have a huge roster with their pictures. I'll usually work the sections. Like we do a lot of sectional time the first couple of days of band camp. So I'll wander around the section, and I'll get to learn like the freshmen's names in the flute section, and then maybe the trumpet section, and then the percussion section, and then I just kind of review them in my mind as well, to make sure that I remember, because it's very important to me that the kids know that I know who they are. And that they're important to me, they're important to the program. So, I do spend a good portion of that first week really concentrating on learning names, for sure.
Cool. So another thing now with that type of program, just where you have, as you said, 4 jazz bands, a huge marching band, many different levels and grade levels of concert bands in your program, really striving for excellence in each of those groups to maintain that level of excellence for the program as a whole. How do you approach trying to shoot for excellence in each different type of group setting? So, for example, let's say if we're at a marching band practice,
Okay.
how do you define excellence for that ensemble versus even if you're working with your fourth jazz band? Like, what kind of things and goals do you have for each of those groups to say, hey, we reached excellence, we're at that level, and we're doing great things together?
Well, I think, for me, I've changed a great deal, on this philosophy over the course of my career, especially in the past couple years. I used to be all about the end result. I used to be all about the rating, the trophy. My band's better than your band. That was so important to me. And it took some life events, which maybe we'll talk about here in a little bit, that made me realize, what are you doing? That's not what's most important. And I really had a paradigm shift, in my mind, where I just changed my mindset to, it's not about the end result, it's about the journey, and what is excellent today in Jazz 4, or what is excellent today in marching band, isn't going to be what's excellent tomorrow or a week down the road or a month down the road. So to me, it's the journey, it's the process. So, I'll just use, I'll use Jazz 1 as an example. Because we play a lot of, legit, Basie charts, the Ad Jones Mel Lewis chart. We play the real well. They're high school kids. The first time they look at those, they read them pretty well, but there's a lot wrong, But I say to them, guys, that was nice. That was really good sight reading. Some of them will look at me like, what are you, nuts? That sounded terrible. I'm like, yeah, it did sound terrible, but it sounded good for day 1. Now let's make it better for day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll record the band, those first couple rehearsals. And sometimes I don't even tell them that I'm recording them. I'll just do it on my cell phone, the voice memo thing. And in a month or 2 down the road, I'll replay that and I'll say, you remember this? And they'll go, oh my gosh, yeah, that was terrible. And I'm like, not for that day, it wasn't terrible, but look how far you've come. Now this is where you are now. Now, in a month from now, or, whatever the time is that I have, is you're going to listen to this recording and you're going to sound even better then. So to me, it's become all about the journey. And I've told kids, whatever happens in the concert happens. I've heard you play this piece so well so many times. Don't put that pressure on yourself that, oh my gosh, if the concert isn't good, then we're not good. Or if a judge, gives us a 90 and not a 98, then we're not good. It doesn't matter. It's about the journey, and it's about making the music, and it's about, that whole process for me is what it's all about.
Yeah, and that's really cool to hear how you kind of put, even with defining excellence as something you could say on a timeline, like what we do on day 1 is going to be a different thing. Because a lot of times I think in our profession, we kind of get to, as you said, even things like adjudications, which they all are fine and dandy, but we're always looking, or even like if we're going to like an all-district festival and we look at that critique sheet, and if we're not in some category, but even saying like, hey, for a day 1 this was excellent, and
right.
Day 2 it's going to be a new level. That's a new perspective I've never heard on the show before, so that's really cool.
Right.
So
right.
So even then, if you can talk about as far as with the different levels that you do with groups, as you said, like Jazz 1 will do a lot more of probably just more of the straight books of the great arrangers and composers, and probably as with Jazz 4 there may be different level or different achievements. So can you talk a little bit about how you, especially with having so many different levels of groups, might try to work within your mid to lower groups, or so to say, or your graded groups, to say at Steve's school, and try to build them up to even to where there's really almost maybe that competitive aspect or something where they really want to work to try to be in that honors program, to be at that next level of achievement and excellence.
Sure, and one of the things too that Steve and I both are adamant about is there is no such, I think I've said this earlier, there's no such thing in this program as a good band and a bad band. There might be a more experienced band. I expect my concert band at Nash to sound musically as good as my honors wind ensemble. Just the music isn't as difficult. Okay, because it's all about teaching those concepts, tone, intonation, rhythm, dynamic, them all, right? So you may be at a different level with the honors wind ensemble. The music is tougher, sure. But I don't look at my concert band and say, okay, well, you're just a concert band, that's good enough. No, it's not good enough, right? you can play these 2/8 notes just as well as this group can play those 2/8 notes, and to me, it's about pushing those second and third bands and jazz, fourth band, pushing them to that next level and getting them to believe that you can achieve, and sure, your music may not be as difficult, but you're still playing in tune. You're still playing with good time. You're still doing dynamics. You're still expressing yourself. And that's what matters. And to Steve and I, that's really, really important, to make sure that every kid feels valued. And just because you're not in the honors wind ensemble doesn't mean we think less of you as a person or as a musician. We don't. We want you to achieve just as high, high of a level as they do.
Certainly, and especially now, and with even regards to like student achievement, like a lot, especially with a lot of things over the past probably 20 years that we've seen in a lot of academic settings where it's a lot of test-based things, which sometimes can put a lot of stressors on students or even amongst faculty. Especially then in the past probably 5 years, mental health and even just quality of life being has become a really open topic for discussion in educators, and especially in a program like yours where you oversee a lot of different administrative things, a lot of different people, a lot of different ensembles, and a lot of different groups. Can you talk a little bit about any advice you may have for being able to handle with the day-to-day stresses of being a busy music director, and just anything that anyone can do to stay healthy mentally and physically to achieve fulfillment and longevity in their career?
Sure. This, and I hope you don't mind. This is really personal to me, and I'm a big advocate for mental health, because I'll be, I don't know how honest I can be, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was broken. Like I was worried so much more about what everyone else thought rather than what I thought. If we were going to, let's say we were going to an adjudication, in Virginia Beach, or we were going to Myrtle Beach or Atlanta, wherever I would sit on that bus ride and I would try to find YouTube videos of the bands we were going to compete against. And oh, we're better than that. Oh, we're better than that. Oh, we gotta be better than that. It was really, I'm going to be honest with you. I look back at it now as a sickness. I spent so much time worrying about what other people were doing and not enough time worrying about what I was doing. And I didn't enjoy performances. I was a mess. I was full of anxiety. The first thing I would do when we were done was, it was the first person I would say, was that good? Did that sound good? Was that okay? I'm thinking, and that's how I was living my life. And I realized, well, this has got to stop. Now, there's a series of events that happened to me that made me realize that. Obviously I lost my wife. She drowned, saving our son. I don't know what else but shortly after that, her grandmother passed away, which was very, very close to my son, Tyler. Her father-in-law passed away at 62. Again, he had lung cancer, but it was, he was only 62 years old. I always have to throw my dog in. She passed away. We had to put her down. I lost a former student who I was very close with and still am very close with their family. And then finally this past summer, I guess it'll be 2 summers ago now, I lost my dad, who was my best friend. It's a lot. That's a lot of loss to deal with, in a short amount of time. And it took that, unfortunately, for me to take a step back and say, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Why is me worrying about how good this band is or that band is or what this person thinks or what that person thinks? How is that more important than just enjoying life and enjoying the kids I have now and enjoying the family I have now? And that all goes back to living in the moment, and really, like today we were working on in my symphonic band, we were working on Chorale Variations by Philip Spark, and I lost track of time, because I was just so immersed in teaching them, be in this moment. I don't care what this sounds like when we go to Disney right now. I don't care what it sounds like in our concert in May right now. I care about what it sounds like right now. Let's enjoy making music right now. And I think that's important, living in the moment. Now that doesn't mean you don't plan, and I'm not saying that. what I'm saying is to not worry and get anxious about this performance or that performance, or will I get into this PMEA conference or All East or Midwest or whatever. Those things will come. If you take care of right now, those things will come. I hope you don't mind if I go off on a tangent a little bit here. When my wife passed away, shortly after, I got a Facebook message. I think it was a Facebook message. Can't remember. It's a long time ago. But he was then the coach of the Western Michigan football team. His name's PJ Fleck. He is now the coach of Minnesota. And he had this whole row the boat mantra that he uses. Move forward, row forward. I could talk for hours about this row the boat thing. And he contacted me because he had read about my story online, probably because it was on Facebook and it was on the news. And I actually had someone from the United Kingdom contact me via email and tell me how sorry they were. I guess it was a slow news day. I don't know, but PJ had lost a son that was only like 2 hours old, died in his arms. And he reached out to me. And he really thought that his whole row the boat mantra would be a good thing for me to take a look at. And I really have. And that's that's my opening day speech for marching band. I talked to them about, rowing the boat, always looking forward. And I use his whole spiel. There's three parts. There's the compass, there's the boat, there's the oars. And I could talk for hours about that, but that's really at the core of my life. I try to use that with my band. I try to use that with my son, my other relationships, is that, live in the moment, but keep moving forward. Don't look back, because you can't control what happened in the past. You can't change what happened in the past, and you cannot, you can't worry about what's going to happen in the future because you just don't know. So take care of right now. To me, that's the biggest thing about mental health. And no matter if it's North Allegheny or if it's, anywhere, take care of right now. For me, that's my biggest piece of advice.
That's a great message. It's kind of like that Rocky Balboa quote. What is it? Life isn't about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward.
And I'll tell you this too, the Rocky, and you can ask any of my friends, the Rocky movies are my favorites. And I watch those anytime they're on. I've watched them a gazillion times. The Creeds are great. I use quotes from those movies all the time. Matter of fact, today I just used one with my Jazz One. I said, I want you guys to go home and I want you to look in a mirror. All right. That guy looking back at you, that's your toughest opponent right there. That's right from the Creed. That's right from Creed 1.
That's great. Yeah. One of my favorites was even in a teaching contest. I always remember they had the little picture of Burgess Meredith. He was his name, Mickey. Yeah, he used to have for kids that come late to the bell. It said come after the bell, like I ain't heard no stinking bell or whatever.
That's it.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So to talk a little bit about especially you went through a series of some pretty large events in your personal life, and even with kind of how you talked about moving forward and kind of just keeping that row the boat mantra. So, whenever, and as you said, a lot of those events were very close to each other in time. And, probably, like most people, you might have had some time off to go do various things. But, when you got back into the swing of things with going back to work, entering your program, if you wouldn't mind talking about what kind of mindset did you have when coming back to your kids, and but also like not even just how you taught, but I mean with your life. I mean, what kind of things did you think about coming back into work that first day, and just what did you do to just seize that day?
Well, it's funny because my wife passed away. It was July 9th, and of course, the funeral's a week later. So I'm at the end of July before things, for lack of a better term, have started to wind down with that whole situation. Well, band camp starts in like a week, but I needed to be there, and I'll tell you why I needed to be there. My wife grew up in Sharpsville, Pennsylvania, which is in Mercer County next to Sharon, and that's where the funeral was. The viewing was in Sharon, and then the funeral was the next day in Sharon. Well, for the viewing, I probably had anywhere between 100 and 150 students, former students, even future students that were in the middle schools come up to that viewing. Drove from Wexford or McCandless all the way up to Sharon to come to that viewing. Okay, great. But then the next day, almost all of them came back for the funeral. and like they were lined out the door. These are kids, and I was so touched by that. My family was so touched by that. So when things started to wind down, people started to go home and people stopped making you dinners and, all that kind of stuff that goes with, funerals and whatnot. I said, what am I going to do? I'm not going to sit at home and lay in bed and look at myself in the mirror and feel sorry for myself. I got to get back to work. I want to be around these kids. They really saved my life. They did. I never realized how caring, how loving, and how nurturing teenagers could be. Also, we hear all the time about all the bad things teenagers do. Well, I had a whole band full of teenagers that couldn't be better, and they and my son, because he almost died too in that accident. He was floating towards Buffalo, so luckily they pulled him out. But my son and my band kids, they were my saviors. They took all the pressure, the weight of that grief, they took it away. Just being able to make music with them. Now, I'll be honest with you, that first year was hard, and I had a lot of help. I had a ton of help. As a matter of fact, probably my best friend in the whole world, my brother Bob Matchett, he took a sabbatical that year. Before my wife Kristen had passed away, he came to band camp and was at my band camp every day to help me out. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you took a sabbatical to get away from this for a year, and here you are at my band camp every day. To me, that was like so touching, and such a, I don't know, like bright light for me. Now, obviously, you ride that wave of emotion, and I would probably say that first year was, I'm almost numb to it. I don't even remember much about it. We did play at the PMEA conference. I was given because you're selected, before, that happened. And I said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to play. That was an emotional performance too, man. Kids were, after we were done, the kids were crying and like, not crying, like they were just felt emotional, because they played that performance knowing, what I've been through. So, I'm doing that thing that you said. I'm rambling. So sorry about that, but, yeah.
That's all good. That's what podcasts are for. But anyway, that's really cool with that story you had mentioned, and it really goes along with, especially in a lot of band programs, how we kind of embrace that band family or band as family approach. And it's really cool to hear that you have a network of people, especially to help with things and to help get through the ups and downs and challenges of life with, as you said, with Bob, is a great human being in with his kind of ways. And because that's one of the things I think that a lot of times maybe more pertinent to music directors, maybe not as the full educational spectrum, but, or even you could say in a music educator, like that, we try to bear so much on our shoulders alone, and we really don't take advantage of the people that are just naturally out there, whether it be a person to just kind of vent through a frustration with and find a solution, or even with kids to help get through that. Because I even know, like, if you're on Facebook and you see a lot of those posts on those band director, I'm a music teacher groups or whatever, there's always somebody that posts, I'm the only music teacher at my school. I do this. I have a cart between 3 different buildings, and there's so much. And I always just feel so sad reading that there's so much that, you're put on your own cross to bear. And if you could talk a little bit about then, just as far as, like, the types of people, as you said, like with Bob, like, like as far as, even when you find those tough times, like whether it be a stressful time, a time of maybe something else going on even outside of the job, who for you have been those types of people in your network to really help you through? Because as you said, Bob, kids, family and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, this is something else that I'm very sure about, I guess. I've had a number of people in my life that I feel blessed to have. One of those we just talked about is Bob. Bob and I have helped each other out, throughout our lives several times. But he really came to my. It really does. He has a knack to know when Todd's not doing well. I better give him a call. We better go hang out. But Bob Matchett for sure. Steve Gage is another one. Steve Gage, I can't say enough nice things about Dr. Gage. My second year at Youngstown State was his first year, and I was on the student committee that we observed directors and whatever. And It's I don't know what the norm is. Do college students usually keep in touch with their college professors at this level for this long? I don't know, but Steve and I will talk either by text or by phone or at least once a week. We've gone to Penguin games before. So I'm so thankful for Steve Gage and Mentor and Bob's dad, Mr. Matchett. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for Mr. Matchett. I would not be a music teacher. I can say that with 100% certainty. Just a fabulous teacher. My dad too. I always say my dad was my best friend. And he truly was. I'm just not saying that. I could always look to him to help me, in tough times, and I really miss him a lot. But and I'm also, very blessed to be able to work with Steve Baldanzi too. Sometimes, you get the assistant that wants to be the director, and Steve and I have never had that kind of tumultuous relationship at all. We've had our moments for sure, but I call him my brother, and he is, he's been, I can talk to him. He can tell me honestly, Todd, you need to cool it, or Todd, you're not thinking about this right. So definitely my dad, Mr. Matchett, Steve Gage, Steve Baldanzi, and for sure Bob Matchett, for sure. There are others too, for sure, but those are probably the main ones that I've really leaned on.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, and while we're kind of even on the topic too, like a lot of people talk about, because again, like kind of getting back to those, especially where probably a lot of people listening to this might see these kind of things. It's always probably through somewhere on social media as you're going through. It's one of those like music teacher groups where someone might post about an unfortunate circumstance or situation they're in with a lot of stress. How do I handle this? Do you have any tips? And a lot of people write about things again that are so pertinent to the daytime work that you'll do. Get a mentor, which are all great things, or delegate that job to kids. But I mean, it also goes into because there's another podcast out there with After Sectionals. One quote they talk about in an episode is, I just don't want to maintain myself to be good today. I want to maintain myself so that I can enjoy doing this for 30 years. And especially with that longevity, that's such an important part. And a lot of it goes into as well what we do, even just once you're home, whether it's 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock after jazz band rehearsal or whatever. So is there anything, and especially with a job like yours where you handle so many different people, ensembles and duties, etc., what do you do when you go home to kind of help just get your mind out of work, or even just to kind of fulfill your life outside of work? What kind of stuff do you do, or do you have any kind of advice for things to look into to help alleviate that kind of stuff? The
first thing I do is I make sure I spend time with my son. To me, because he's in the program now. He's a trumpet player. He's in 9th grade, but I do make time for him every day. And again, going through what I went through, you realize you prioritize things, and you realize that time, here's another Rocky quote, time's undefeated. Time takes everybody out, so I spend a lot of time with Tyler, because he's, to me, I mean, he's my everything, right now. And on a lesser degree, of course I enjoy sports. I watch a lot of hockey, a lot of football, and that kind of takes my mind away from, the daily stresses of the job. But you got to have things. You got to have family. You got to have friends outside. You can't be, it's to say don't bring it home with you, I think is unrealistic. When you're in our profession, you're going to take it home with you. If the band doesn't play well one day, or you screwed something up, you just want to get back in and fix it, and that's what I do. I always say the first thing I say if I have a bad rehearsal, the first thing I say is, what did I do wrong? And there's a lot of people that say, those darn kids, this, that, the other thing. I really don't do that. I really say, what did I do wrong? What could I do to make this better? So to say, don't take it home, I think is impossible. You're going to take it home with you. But I think it's also important to have other things like family, like friends, to have, so that you're not beating at, over and over and over again, because that's another thing with the mental health thing, that it'll burn you out, and it'll drive you nuts, it really can.
Yeah, certainly, and that's why it's such an important topic now, and whether it be through professional development groups or even seminars, mm-hmm. You'll see it now at Midwest. They present on that exact topic.
I identify my students, and have for the past several years, that have anxiety and depression, and I make it a point to talk to them, just to ask them, hey, how's it going? How you doing? I make it a point so that they know that, you know what, I may be, you know, a lot older than you, but I'm going through the same things, and I understand what you feel like. And sometimes when I describe those physical symptoms or emotional symptoms of depression and anxiety, they look at me and they go, you really do get it. I'm like, yeah, I do. And a lot of those kids I still maintain contact with today, you know, to make sure they're doing okay. And they make sure that I'm doing okay. You know, I've just become, you know, oftentimes, you know, mental health can be looked at as, it's not real. Just smile, just get over it. You know, you'll be fine, you know, rub a little dirt on it, you know? If you can't see it, it must not hurt. You know, a broken arm, you can see it. It heals. You know, mental health is so different. And I think when kids see an adult and can feel that adult understands how that feels physically and emotionally and mentally, you know, what the anxiety attacks can feel like, what the, you know, not wanting to get out of bed, you know, feels like. And I feel like, you know, I don't want to hide that anymore. Like I want to let people know, yeah, you know what, I do have depression and anxiety, and I'm living with it, and I'm doing the best I can with it, and I'm going to use it to help other people deal with it. Because for me, again, kind of going back to my wife, you know, of course I was very sad, and you know, you get through the grieving process. I don't know that you're ever through it, but I started to think, you know what, maybe now I have a responsibility. This happened to me for a reason. You know, now maybe I have a responsibility to help other people get through similar things. Maybe not their spouse dying, or, you know, or just any kind of pain, you know, mental pain or emotional pain. Like, I think now I have it's a responsibility that's been put on me to help other people in this. And I can use music to do that. I can use, you know, personal relationships to do that. I have kids, you know, they're in my office in the band room all day long. I mean, you know, they're practicing. Sometimes we're just hanging out, you know, just talking about things, talking about music, talking about whatever. But I really feel that. And this has been like in the past year or so, I've really felt this responsibility, you know, to help others using what has happened to me.
That's really cool how you can take those personal experiences and really just keeping it real with kids to even help them too. That's really cool perspective, because that's something too that sometimes, you know, even in teacher training programs where you'll hear about ways to help with kids, but with that personal approach that you talked about, that's something that it isn't often too much, because that's even another thing in as far as educators in general. Sometimes there has to be somewhat of this God complex where, you know, we're a different level of being, and to keep that humility, I guess, to say, or the, you know, just being a human is part of how you relate with people. That's really cool.
Well, I'll say this as well, you know, and again, I always hesitate to say this because I don't ever mean to belittle, you know, my colleagues who teach other subjects. But a lot of times those teachers will have a student for a semester or a year, and that's it. Some of these students will have me from 9th grade in the marching band all the way through 12th grade. We go on band trips together. They see me get off a bus in Beckley, West Virginia at 3 a.m. to go to the bathroom in shorts and a t-shirt. You don't see your math teacher like that. You don't see your English teacher like that. You know, and then when you share something with these students as personal as music, there's a connection there too. I just think it's a different kind of a relationship that you form, you know, with your students, you know, in music. And I think it's a more personal relationship. You know, the kids get to know you. I get to know their families a lot more, because like I said, you may have a math teacher for a year and that's it. Then you never see them again, or, you know, but me, they're going to have me for 4 years. You know, they're going to see me on Friday nights. They're going to see me at concerts. They're going to take band trips, you know, so I just, you know, I don't know. I just think it's a different, again, my responsibility, to use this to help kids get through whatever it is they need to get through, because it's tough, you know, with social media and TikTok and Twitter and all this other stuff. I mean, it's hard, you know, for kids, and sometimes I think, you know, they just need someone to talk to, you know, to realize, hey, this guy gets it, he understands. You know, I can't fix it, but I can listen and I can understand.
Yeah, and that's certainly sometimes the biggest part, is just even understanding. So with that said then, Todd, to move on to some questions that we talk about with every guest here on the show, could you talk about one or two of your favorite rehearsal tactics?
Oh, yeah, sure. One of the things that I've been doing with my concert groups is I started using the tonal energy tuner as a drone kind of a thing. And recently, my band parents got me and Steve and I a harmony director. Now I haven't used it yet, but I've been reading up on it. So that whole drone thing, I like to put like a B flat drone on, and then we'll do Remington exercise. We'll do lip slurs. We'll do basically all your warm up stuff, chorales. But I'll keep that drone on, through that whole process, and then the kids can, they have that steady pitch that they can hear, match up against, and it really has helped. Really has helped. And then when you get into the tuning the chords, I'm a real big, lowering that third of a major chord, raising it in a minor chord, and the harmony director and the total energy tuner allow you to use that, difference between just and equal temperament intonation. And then when they apply it to the music, they go, okay, I'm hearing this now, so that's something it's probably, not a new thing, but for me within the past year or two, it's been something I've really delved into a lot, especially with my concert groups. So.
Yeah, that's definitely something I know Adam Gumbel definitely does. He
Yeah.
was at Westchester University now.
Yep, I know
in
Adam.
His
Yep.
rehearsal, a lot of that stuff, and even just talking about in tone, that's really neat. So then with that said, if I were to walk up to you on the street and within maybe 30 seconds to 2-minute response, if I asked you, why do we teach music in schools, or why is it important, what would you have to say to that?
Well, there's always the music helps you get better SAT scores. Music helps you do better in math. That may all be true. But why can't we just teach music for music's sake? Because music is music. I always say this to parents and kids. I feel like I'm picking on math. I'm not, but because math is very important. But 2 + 2 is 4. I don't know that you're going to feel any way about that. That's not going to arouse any sort of emotion or feeling within you. But when you get done playing, O Magnum Mysterium, and your band just, crushes it and sounds beautiful, you get the goosebumps, you get that aesthetic response, and it really teaches you to be, I know this is so cliche, but it teaches you to be human, and I'm not just band. I mean, band, orchestra, choir, all of the arts, and I really feel it's important that they receive, and they often don't. I'm lucky in my district that they are valued as much as they are, but they're so important to the complete young adult. Being able to evoke those emotions and having those aesthetic responses, the goosebumps, being able to make decisions, about intonation and about rhythm and really, anything that a major company is looking for in an employee, we do. You have to make creative choices. You have to decide, does this sound good or does this not sound good? Does this feel good or does this not feel good? And that's really, I think, what I've talked to a lot of companies are looking for. They don't want somebody that has one solution to the problem. And this is it. This is the solution. Well, let's look at creative ways to solve this problem, and maybe save the company money, maybe do it in less time, but still as efficiently. I don't know. I just feel that music does all that stuff. And this recent push for the 20th century skills and creativity, and we've been doing that for years, in our classes. And I just feel that I'm very lucky that at North Allegheny, I have an administration and a board and a community that's oftentimes very supportive. And because I know that's not the case, in a lot of schools, but that, to me, we don't teach music so that you're going to be a music major or you're going to be a band director or you're going to play in the Pittsburgh Symphony. We teach you music to be human so that you can have feelings, you can have emotion. What it feels like to paint a picture with sound. I'm sounding so cliche, I know that, but I'm trying to figure out a way to say, I think what I'm getting at. That aesthetic response, that you have to certain sounds and harmonies, and it's to me, it's very important.
That's quite a common response here. I've gotten a lot when I ask that question is with the aesthetic response, and that's really cool to hear, especially in how you put it as far as how do we serve somebody going out as if they were to work in a company. What kind of skills do you take? And that could be even to a trade or anything.
Sure.
That's a really cool answer. So then with that said, you've mentioned a lot of influential people in this discussion that have been highly influential in your life, but could you talk a little bit about what people have inspired you in your career, but then also what lessons might have you taken from them?
Oh, well, I mean, the people who have inspired me in my career?
Yeah, so what kind of people have really inspired you in your career or even personal life? And what kind of lessons maybe have you taken from your time or experiences with them into your own life or teaching?
Well, I mean, Steve Gage, that's right. I mean, like I said, if I had to pick one mentor, outside of my father, it would have been Steve Gage. And just what I think he gets more out of an ensemble in a 50, 60-minute rehearsal than anyone I've ever seen in my life. He just has, I don't know if that's that magic dust or what it is, but he can have, people just sitting on the edge of their seats, students just waiting, for his next, words to come out of his mouth. What's he going to say next? And I've really tried to, I learned a lot of passion from him for teaching and education, conducting, for wind band literature, for sure. That's, a lesson he taught me, is to be passionate, to feel good about it, and like I said earlier, to develop those relationships, because it's so important, to not, alienate yourself. Like I said, my high school band director, Mr. Matchett, Bob's dad, really taught me how to rehearse a band. He did amazing things. He had one band class at that high school with, I don't know, must have had 80 or 90 kids in the room, playing Lincolnshire Posy. I can imagine that, and he would go and get superior ratings, so just, when I reflect back on those times, the things that he did, his classroom management, his rehearsal, just, how he rehearsed the ensemble, and I've borrowed that from him. I would say Frank Farina, the former director at NA, I really didn't take over for Frank because Frank retired, and then they had a couple, a little bit of a couple messy years there, and then I came in. But I student taught with Frank, and Frank really taught me the politicking. He taught me, Frank, he'd go to a community parade and you'd see him out there kissing babies, and, he could have run for president, and he really taught me how to work that end of the program, to get people involved in the community and immerse your program into the community, so that they feel vested in it as well, because that's where your support's going to come from, your community. So I would say those three for sure, and Steve Gage gave me the passion and the drive and the just the want to, I often find myself saying in rehearsal, what would Steve Gage do? I don't know what the acronym would be for that, but what would Steve Gage do? And just remembering, Mr. Matchett and his rehearsal technique and how organized he was, and how he just taught kids how to play their instruments in minimal amount of time. And then Frank, how he basically ran the program, and got it out into the community and got people to like the band, and wanted to support the band.
Those are certainly a lot of unique things about those people, and I can even relate that to in my conversation with Steve Gage a few months ago whenever we had talked for this project. That was actually our first time really talking. We had shot a couple emails and texts back and forth, but one of the biggest things when I've reached out to a couple people and really talked about, hey, what can we talk about? One of the unique things they had talked about Steve in advising for the podcast interview was his ability to connect with somebody, or even just keeping it student-centered in the component of what we do in our jobs. And I can even tell you in that interview, or just that conversation with Steve, his ability to really look into you as a person and just the ways. That is something I remember even in my 1.5 hour discussion with him that I really took a lot from as well. Just how you can connect with somebody, relate, and really just motivate. And that was a really motivational experience for me as well. And
he's real. I mean, that's real. That's the thing. Some people say, it's almost, I don't know. I've heard some people say, is he really like that? Yeah. No, he's really like that. That's him. He's really that passionate. He's really that excited, about teaching and music and conducting and helping people, he's just terrific.
Certainly. So now, for a final question, what advice would you give music teachers to help their students best thrive?
You got to make it about them. And that's hard to do. I always said students don't need your class to graduate. So, you can't approach it like a quote unquote academic subject, because I feel that music is academic, but because they have to be there. They need that to graduate. They don't need band to graduate. They don't need orchestra to graduate or choir to graduate. So you really, I don't know if fun is the right word, because I don't know necessarily, I think it should be more than fun. Making music at a high level, no matter, and when I say at a high level, you could be playing a level 1 piece of music at a high level. I'm not talking about difficulty level. I'm talking about just musical level is fun. That should be the fun in it. And you've got to make it about them. You've got to make sure that the students feel that energy. They see themselves and hear themselves making that music. Like I said, 2 + 2 is 4. You're not going to feel any way about that. It just is what it is, but playing the whole first suite, wow, there's so many emotions that go into that, and being able to get the students to emote like that and to express themselves. To me, that's what it should be all about. Of course, it's all about playing well and getting the superior rating and all that. But the more important thing to me is, what did the students get? You've got to make sure they get something out of that experience that's valuable, that's meaningful, and that's long lasting.
A lot of great feedback and some advice there, Todd. So with that said, I'd like to thank you again for your time here. It's been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to this project. And all the best to you and your students as you continue on with your school year.
No, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
This concludes our episode. Many thanks to Mr. Todd Stefan for sharing his time, wisdom, and insight on what it takes to lead an outstanding music program, as well as ways to stay healthy to enjoy a long and prosperous and enjoyable career in teaching music. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play Music, as well as liking and following us on Facebook under Director's Circle to stay updated on all future episodes. This is Doug Conrad saying thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in to the next edition of Director's Circle.